Dear colleagues, in this report I will discuss the case of the mobility of the Lutheran German printer Joachim Rhett, who came from a famous printing dynasty in Szczecin and Gdańsk from Royal Prussia. I will try to reveal how, using the knowledge and skills accumulated over several generations, he contributed to cultural transfer, specifically the establishment of printing houses in two different countries, Grand Duchy of Lithuania and Kingdom of Sweden, in the cities Kedainiai, in Polish Kedainiai, and Wismar. To conduct the research similar to this hero, it was necessary to cross the borders of several national states, analyze various national historiographies, printed and written sources stored in the libraries and archives of several countries. I hope that this allowed me to create, or rather reconstruct, one historical person from several persons. Let's say different or fragmented individuals. Many things will not be discussed in this report. This will be done in the publication. Since our conference is also dedicated to the history of the wonderful Polish language, I will also quote some excerpts from the documents in Polish too. Migration of German Lutherans, skilled craftsmen, merchants, financiers, etc., often meant a productive cultural transfer or cultural exchange, which manifested itself in the transfer of various cultural goods and contributed to the development of many innovations in the economy and culture and their modernization. German Lutherans who were looking for the better bread, despite their relative isolation, were quite effective carriers of cultural goods. Their family members lived in several Baltic states and regions, moved intensively along business and kinship routes, communicated closely, and maintained close family, economic, religious, and other ties. Due to their specific qualifications, German Lutherans were in big demand in Eastern Europe. They were used to solve the problem of various deficit services. They were pharmacists, printers, surgeons, goldsmiths, executioners, etc., etc. At least in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, there was a great shortage of them. Evangelical Reformed family of Radziwiłł were very pragmatically exploited them for their own economic and other purposes, but didn't allow them to integrate with the locals, even forbidding Lutheran pastors from preaching in Lithuanian in the city of Birża in Polish in the 17th century. With the outbreak of wars between Russia, Sweden, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, German Lutherans faced new challenges for business and even life or health. After the deluge, religious intolerance in Catholic society increased. Until then, Lutherans rarely encountered forced migration. The post-war economic decline also forced them to look for new opportunities to move even wider and further. Of course, German Lutherans were not the only ones who carried out such innovation through migration in these lands. In the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, as in many other lands, a major role was played by the wave, for example, Calvinist immigration that began in the southern Netherlands in the 16th century and reached various European countries, analyzed by Heinz Schilling and other researchers. I will not mention other important ethnic and confessional due to a lack of time, but they were many and diverse. As mentioned, Rhett was a representative of a famous dynasty of printers, very active in the golden age of printing in the first half of 17th century. His father was Georg Rhett, a printer in Gdansk and Szczecin. Nota bene, as many as 4 Rhett's sons became printers. 4 from 5 sons, they became printers. It is not clear when Rhett was born, but he must have been the youngest son in the family. Is very important thing. He learned the craft. Printers were very highly qualified craftsmen in his father's printing house, and after his sudden death, in the printing house of his mother and older brothers. Historiography states that all the brothers studied at the famous academic gymnasium in Gdansk, but Rhett is not in the matriculation records. Perhaps he only graduated from the St. Peter and Paul Church School in Gdansk. Its rector, the man of letters, Johann Georg Moresius, on the occasion of young printer's departure to Kedainiai, in his farewell letter published in Gdansk in September 1651, in an anagram, he called Rhett a young but experienced printer. Artifacts. He dedicated the work to cultissimo artisque typografice peritissimo juveni, that he was, and titled him the printer of the Duke Janusz Radziwiłł and the Kedainiai Gymnasium. He said, tu caiodunum, digno juvenem, excipere plausu. The older brothers, David Friedrich and Philip Christian, who remained in Danzig, disregarding their mother's orders, eventually quarreled over the profitable printing of Avicen and Novellen. The youngest representative of the Rhett dynasty of printers had no place left in either Szczecin or Gdansk, and had to migrate and look for work elsewhere. Kedainiai in Polish was a private tycoons evangelical reformed, if I can say tycoons, evangelical reformed Radvilas or Radziwiłł city on the Nevėžis River, which in the 5th decade of the 17th century had achieved a considerable development. The city had a Magdeburg self-government. It was a considerable center of crafts and trade, a multi-religious, multinational and multicultural city. There was well-known evangelical Reformed gymnasium in Kedainiai, where students studied not only from Grand Duchy of Lithuania, but from other countries. The city of New Kedainiai was established there, where mostly Lutheran Germans lived. This was called Januszowa, in Polish Januszowo, according to Janusz Radziwiłł, according to this name. They did what that was done by these parents. Thus, legally, there were even 2 cities in Kedainiai, Old and New Kedainiai. Already in the 3rd decade of the 17th century, the elder of the Radvilas Kedainiai state took care of establishing a printing house, but this was not done. And the paper mill was not established in Kedainiai, as was incorrectly stated in previous historiography. Rhett arrived in the city of Kedainiai at the end of 1651, apparently at the invitation of its owner, the tycoon Janusz Radziwiłł. He was to become a printer of the city and gymnasium, and most importantly, to publish the religious literature of the Evangelical Reformed Church. Upon arrival, he borrowed 140 gulden from the major of Kedainiai, Stepanas Jaugelis Telega, Lithuanian. In early December this year, the local Evangelical Reformed Church paid the debt to the major instead of the printer. It is unclear where Rhett brought the printing equipment from. Researchers have made various guesses about the fonts brought from Gdansk or Gdansk, Königsberg or Vilnius, or even made locally in Kedainiai. I think that the latest is unlikely. In Kedainiai, Rhett managed to publish several publications in Lithuanian, Polish, Latin, and German languages around 1652-1654. The largest and most important for cultural history is a religious book, Convolute, Knyga nuo bažnystės krikščioniškos, published this one in left at the left side, published in the summer of 1654, in Lithuanian, consisting really of the three books. Its volume is 672 pages, circulation 500 copies, format in quarto. The book is printed in two types of Gothic font, and Latin Antiqua is used on the title pages, prefaces, and headings. As mentioned, in fact, the book is a convolute of three books with separate page pagination and separate correction of errors. As was often the case at the time, the books were distributed in pamphlets, not bound. Historiography sometimes claims that Rhett had learned Lithuanian and himself Lithuanized, the spelling of his surname, Joachimas, as you can see, Joachimas Jurgis Rhetas. This is in Lithuanian. But I think that this statement cannot be confirmed. This would be a radical result not of cultural transfer, but simply really of cultural exchange, a clear adaptation to the local reader, taking into account the active reception of a cultural commodity, a book. Of course, it would be more acceptable if the surname of the printer of the book was in Lithuanian or Lithuanian. However, his surname in Lithuanian, in semi-Lithuanian, you can see, is written in this way only in this multi-volume Lithuanian publication, specifically on the title pages of the mentioned book of the Christian Church, and in the others publications only in the usual way, not in the Lithuanian. So the question remains open. The townspeople or laypeople or clergymen who participated in the publication of the book could have also advised in this way, thus contributing to the greater domestication of this cultural good. Maybe. Some of the publications have apparently been lost due to a small print runs and the chaos of war. This assumption is confirmed, for example, by a letter, unfortunately defective, from the Upite cup-bearer Krzysztof Stryszka, Podczas in Polish, to the Duke of Kurland and Zemigalia, Jakob Kettler, dated as you can see in 1645, found by me in the Latvijas Valsts Vēstures archives a few years ago, maybe 5, maybe 6. It mentions the publication of the theological work unknown to historiography of this printing house in Kedainiai. The author wrote that in Polish. I will try. Jeden z profesorów in defective gimn kajudencji wydał traktacik, to już na pewno, wydał traktacik piękny de disi, dalej, further dissidentibus maybe, którym mi synowie moi stamtąd, to przeczytałem, że podal czyta, dalej, ręk waszej książęcej mości posyłam, też nadzieję będąc, że się i księżna mość kurlandzka będzie on nim delektowała. We know that another large-scale religious work, Lithuanian Agenda, was planned to be published in March 1655. The elders of the Kedainiai Evangelical Reformed Church decided to raise funds for its publications. However, in April 1655, it was decided to seize Rhett's property because he didn't give the church the entire circulation, and having taken money, didn't carry out the printing of the new Lithuanian Agenda. We find a lot of unknown, valuable information about the fate of Rhett's Kedainiai printing house in a letter from the Kedainiai city clerk, elder of the Lutheran Church, Wojciech Kalinowski, in 1669 to another city owner, later city owner, the Prussian governor Boguslav Radziwill. He wrote that former Kedainiai printer Rhett owed the Kedainiai Lutheran Church more than 100 guldens. When he left, he was unable to take the printing house, which had been damaged and partially restored during the first turmoil, and having no money, he left it in lieu of a debt to the church. The Muscovites and other casus damaged it even more. Rhett no longer intended to buy it. Having learned that various equipment remained in Kedainiai, such as a press and a number of letters, Michael Karnal, the printer of Duke of Kurland and Semigalia, asked for them in his letter. It is known that Michael Karnal was a printer who left Torun, not Gdansk like Rhett, but Torun for Jelgava in 1668. Kalinowski stated that as a subject of Boguslav Radziwill, he would like the printing house to remain in Kedainiai for the decoration of the city and the convenience of the school. Ku ozdobė miestą į Vaigodžią školnai. He even suggested luring Karnal's apprentice to look at the letters, determine how many alphabets there were, what would be needed for restoration, and how much it would cost. Okay, I don't have time. And Wismar. Previous historiography has not clarified the further life of Rhett after Kedainiai. In the 1972 publication Słowny pracowników książki polskiej Maria Pelczarowa, an expert of Gdansk printing, noted that the further fate of Rhett and the printing house in Kedainiai are unknown. This happened because researchers failed to establish the connection between Rhett and Wismar. However, Wismar historian Karl Schroeder has mentioned the printer Rhett in Wismar as early as the end of 19th century. Printer ended up in Wismar at the invitation of a famous European lawyer, the vice president of the Wismar Tribunal, vice-president des Wismar Tribunal, established in 1653, Dr. Utriska Juris, a diplomat, David Mavius. So not the city council. Until then, the people of Wismar had used the services of printers in Lübeck or Rostock, simply. As early as 1662, a Wismar bookseller ordered a publication from a printing house in Lübeck. As the Wismar historians noted, the city fathers were not interested in establishing a printing house in Wismar itself. Rhett established the first printing house in the famous Hanseatic city of Wismar with his own funds. Maybe these brothers who were printers could also have helped financially. It is unclear where Rhett brought any equipment from Kedainiai printing house to Wismar. Comparisons of fonts, borders, etc., in the 17th century often don't yield any results. Many of them are identical, made by the same manufacturers or different manufacturers, but according to the same stylistic. The first Rhett print in Wismar was published in German 1662. It is a funeral sermon of Pastor Jacobus Chasovius dedicated to Baroness Anna Sophia von Bülow. It is, we can assume that Rhett had to come to Wismar from Kedainiai earlier. In 1663, Rhett asked the city council for a loan of 100 Reichsthalers. He was not given a positive response. He repeated the same in 1667 and in 1668. Only in 1670 did he receive an advance payment of 300 Reichsthalers for printing school materials. It is known that already during the Habsburg era in the 17th century, Wismar began to be transformed in the city fortress. From 1632, city belonged to Sweden, was its administrative and military center of strategic importance. In 1653, the tribunal was established there, the highest court for the German lands of Sweden. But it becomes clear that Rhett, who arrived in Wismar from already the insecure and stagnant Kedainiai, cakes didn't wait in Wismar, if can say that. He had to live in a city fortress, in a German city occupied by Sweden. He experienced later another Danish occupation, simply in 1675 and in 1679, and even died during this occupation. He didn't expect any greater well-being, but he avoided religious persecution. It is possible that in Kedainiai, due to the Catholic reaction and economic decline, he would have had difficulty continuing his work. In Wismar, Rhett published at least 70 editions between 1662 and 1679, and the printing house was run by his widow in 1680s, published about 10 editions. And some conclusions. Rhett became a productive career of cultural transfer, and the hero of this my report, whether he wanted or not. His brothers lived more comfortably and richer, but none of them established two new printing houses in two different countries. And we talk about them a little bit less, I can say. When the need for establishing printing houses arose, and due to the insecurity and economic decline caused by the Russian, Swedish, and Polish-Lithuanian wars, his qualifications were properly utilized in two different cities, Kedainiai and Wismar. Thank you, and sorry for my...